It's a game we all feel the Bills could have won the other day in Jacksonville. But listen, it is what it is, and we made it to the playoffs. Mark Kelso is with the Buffalo Bills, and he's the radio color commentator. And Mark, good morning. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. How are you guys doing today in Utica?
Well, listen, I'd love to be preparing for another game this weekend, but hey, we got what we got, and we're certainly thankful of that. What do you think? Changes coming, and obviously everybody eyeing that the quarterback position.
Yeah, and changes have been forthcoming all season.
Yeah,
I mean, seems like every week the roster was fluctuating. Anytime they had an opportunity, they felt to improve the roster, they did so, and if they had guys in the practice squad that they felt were going to be competitive and have a healthy contribution to an upcoming game day, I mean, they didn't hesitate to move those guys around either, and the roster fluctuated a lot. I think that they'd like to have a lot of consistency to the roster, and I think that makes for a good organizational structure, but I don't think they just must not have felt like they had the guys that they want in the building right now. And certainly in this day and age of free agency, you're going to fluctuate some, but hopefully not as much as they did this year or have in years past. But, yeah, the quarterback situation is difficult because Tyrod's a great leader. He has some great skills, but he also has some limitations, and I think we saw some of those against a really good Jacksonville defense on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just a fan, and you walk away and you say, boy, if he just could have been more accurate, we'd have won that game. It seems that pass accuracy, boy, it was so evident in the game in Jacksonville.
Yeah, sometimes when he tries to fit it into a tight window, I mean, he's got good arm strength. I think his accuracy is solid, but there are a couple times, and I think one of the plays you're probably referring to is the Nick O'Leary play when he was down the seam, and he had run that play. They had run that play a couple times on that drive, and one time he threw to the outside of Deontay Thompson, and that was overthrown a little bit. He was really well covered by Boyer. Yeah. And then on the inside, O'Leary had been open on that previous play as well, and then the next time he was open a little bit as well. It was a really tight window. He would have had to fit it in. He floated it just a little bit, and just a little bit too far for O'Leary. So there's a couple of situations there. I mean, that's a really hard throw, but again, to win playoff games, those are kind of throws you're going to have to make. And then the one thing that Tyrod I don't think does is he just doesn't trust himself enough because he won't let it go sometimes. He's got a guy open, and he looks like he's going to throw there, but then he decides, well, maybe there's a better option, and by the time he goes through that read and that progression, then he has to start scrambling, particularly on Sunday against a really formidable defensive line.
And even his sense of urgency, especially in the second half, didn't seem to be all there. I mean, he didn't even seem to be in it when you looked at him on the bench or even on the field. That was kind of unfortunate to see, at least from my perspective.
And how is there not a penalty on that last play that where his head was just smashed into the field?
Yeah, there's a couple situations, and one is I didn't see him on the sideline, so I really don't have any credibility to comment on that situation as far as what he looked like or what he was doing on the sidelines. One of, and this isn't to disqualify that comment or anything, but one of his good qualities is he's pretty calm under pressure. Yeah. So he really doesn't show a lot of emotion. I mean, that's not atypical of a Tyrod performance because like I said, he's calm and he's confident. But the hit in the first half, I think, bothered him a little bit, and he may have been feeling some effects. I mean, again, this is just my speculation, haven't talked to anybody or he or anybody else. But that hit in the first half with Miles Jack when he slid and he came slammed down on the back of his head. Now, he received a penalty for that, and that was, I think the Bills ended up converting field goal on that situation. But that was a situation that could have been something that lingered, and that penalty towards the end of the game when he threw him down like that. I don't know that it was flagrant, but he certainly slammed him down to the ground really hard, and there was no question that there were some issues as a result of that hit. And that's, you don't really need to do it in that situation. Just bring the guy down. You don't need to slam him down to the ground. It did not draw a penalty. In some respects, I think it should have, but I don't know in the course of the game. If not like he was trying to do that, just trying to make an aggressive tackle, and unfortunately, Tyrod took the worst of that.
Yeah. This fall, the Bills made some moves, I thought great moves, to kind of stockpile some draft picks to better prepare for the future. We're talking about the quarterback position. Do you think the Bills would maybe try to move some of those picks for a veteran, established quarterback, or would they look to move up in the draft, or is Peterman the answer? What is your take on how they move forward this offseason with sorting out the quarterback position?
Start with the last question, I guess. Is Peterman the answer? And I don't know, because certainly the time that he spent so far, you would be extremely hesitant to put him in and even pencil him in. I don't think they would ever do that, is say that we're going to rely on Nathan Peterman. I mean, it looks like he might have a bright future. He's a decisive guy. He's got a strong arm, but he needs a lot of experience playing the game at this level. Playing at the University of Pittsburgh, which is an outstanding collegiate institution, but not with the speed of these corners and the acceleration that they have, and a pass rush pressure. I mean, didn't see that on a consistent basis week in and week out in college, so he's going to have to experience that a lot. In that regard, I mean, he looked like a good pick, and he still looks like a good pick, and I think he's a young man who's very mature and has the opportunity perhaps to have a starting role in this league at some point, but not next year and probably not the year after that. But so now you got to say, well, what are you going to do in this situation? Well, you got to make the decision on Tyrod first. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Is he going to want to stay, or is he going to want to find another opportunity for himself because of what happened this year? And it seemed as though at some point they were looking for a different option at quarterback. And if he feels that that's the case, even with his great leadership abilities, he may want to take his services elsewhere. And then you say, well, do you need somebody, a veteran guy, perhaps that can come in and for a couple of years, if you package one pick to get a veteran guy, and I don't think you're going to get a guy that's going to require a lot of draft picks, because you're going to have somebody that's a seasoned veteran and a guy who's played at a pretty high level in this league. Don't know if you're going to go out and try to get one of those guys that's going to require a lot of cap money. Yeah. And then you're going to say, well, we've got to find a way to package some of those picks to get somebody in the draft. Do they feel like that guy's available this year? I don't think they're certainly not going to be able to package enough picks to get a day one starter. I don't know if that guy exists here. I mean, there's a couple quarterbacks that have a really good pedigree, and a number of others, probably a handful, 6, 7 guys that they feel like might have a good career in the NFL at the next level here. But certainly time will tell about that. But I think I would suspect if they don't come to an agreement with Tyrod, which I still think that will be a consideration, but if they don't, I suspect that they'll use some type of a veteran that has had a really good pedigree in this league, understands how to manage the offense, and is not going to get you in trouble, but it's going to be decisive and then utilize their defense. But there's areas across the field and across the position groups that need to be that they need to have some work on to create more productivity. And the pass rush needs more productivity. The linebacking core, particularly at the middle linebacker with Preston Brown, I think I want to say his contract is up. He'll be in his 5th year. So there's an issue there, and you need some depth at that position, and you really didn't have an opportunity to stretch the field vertically with the offensive personnel you had. So you got to find a way to do that. Are those people in the building? And I don't know. And if they're not, there has to be some type of vertical component to your passing game so that you can take the pressure off. An outstanding running game that ended the season still at the top, probably the top 5 or 7 as far as rushing yards on a weekly basis.
End of the day, though, it ended, it ended the way it did, but it ended. The drought has ended. And I will tell you, Bills fans are going to be expecting, there's going to be some expectation for next season. There's no doubt. I want to ask you one question that's not a Bills-related question, but it always affects us. I am loving the turmoil in the locker room in New England right now. What is going on there?
Let's hope it transfers to the field, particularly when the Bills play them. But it never seems to. They seem to be able to find a way to manage that turmoil. I mean, there's emotions in every locker room, and they do as good a job as anybody, if not better than most teams, at trying to manage that and not allowing those frustrations and those emotions and those disagreements. I mean, everybody has disagreements. I mean, we've seen it with Brady on the field with his offensive coordinators at different times, and I mean, you saw it with McDaniels at times. You saw it with O'Brien when he was the quarterback coach there and the offensive coordinator as well. So I mean, everybody wants to paint a really pretty picture on the outside, but inside there's a lot of struggle that goes on, particularly when you're trying to put together a really good team and a really good season. And those internal struggles are probably consistent across the league. It's just sometimes the public gets wind of them, and sometimes the public does not. But like I said, they do as good a job as anybody and you hear those guys talk, and the Bills did a very good job this year as well in their conversations with the media, because it is. I mean, in some respects, it is about the process, and it's about just working day in and day out to put together the best season you possibly can. Now, if you have a season and consistency like New England has, I mean, you have a template that you know is going to work.
Yeah.
And the Bills have seemed to begin to build that foundation of a template that now you don't have to rewrite everything. You just have to tweak things just a little bit and hopefully continue to move forward. But yeah, no question. I mean, if you're asking me, I'd like to take Pittsburgh to win the AFC, but you don't know. I mean, these games will be extremely competitive. And one or two plays sometimes in these games mean the difference between victory or defeat, and that's what makes playoff football so exciting.
And maybe we'll have some consistency on what is and what is not a reception.
Don't think that's going to happen anytime.
Holy moly!
But just there's so many little nuances, and when they slow it down, you know, they go frame by frame. I mean, you can't see that, and you can't see that on the field with a live official, and it's just, you know, sometimes I don't know. I know they're not going to get rid of replay, but you know, go back to the tapes. If you can go back and listen to me talking years ago when they started this whole replay thing, I was not in favor of it from the start. It's a human game. There's going to be human errors, and obviously you don't want a really flagrant or egregious error to cause the difference between victory or defeat. But they're going to make mistakes. Officials make mistakes. Players make mistakes. Coaches make mistakes. Everybody on the field makes mistakes. And, you know, I don't want a bunch of robots out there running around playing football. I want to see guys that have emotions and guys that play with emotion, and sometimes emotion affects the outcome of the game. And so there's going to be some errors, and I don't think very often that an official's call is the direct result of a victory or defeat. It affects the flow of the game, but it isn't the final stamp on whether or not they win or lose the game, except that was that play in, you know, with what was it, Seattle and was it Green Bay when that play actually happened at the end of the game in the end zone. I mean, that obviously meant the difference, but most of the time it's in the flow of the game or through the course of the game, and is not the final stamp on victory or defeat.
Mark Kelso, we appreciate all the time you gave us this year. It was for Bills fans. It was a positive season, and we're going to build off that. It should be a pretty busy off season, and maybe we can talk to you when the ball drops on one of those. When something happens, we'll reach out to you.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Anytime. We love those fans in Utica and appreciate their support and you know, appreciate the support of everybody in the state, and the support in Jacksonville was fantastic.
Oh yeah, plenty of Uticans. Plenty of Uticans made it to Jacksonville.
Fantastic. I mean, there were a lot of people, I think, that live down in those tri-state areas, North South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, that made the trip to the game. I mean, I know people that came from Minneapolis. I know people that came from Texas. I know people that came from Western New York and all throughout the state. So it was a fantastic showing. And all those tarps that they usually have covering all those empty seats in Jacksonville, every single one of them was full. And a large portion of them were full because of Bills fans and their support of this club.
All right. Well, listen, thanks so much. We'll talk again soon, Mark, and Happy New Year.
Great. Happy New Year to you guys. Have a great week.
Thanks. You too.